slideshow. My screen is come on. Okay, welcome to the UN CEFACT Global Trust Registry project. I think, in fact, I know all of the people on this call are familiar with the Code of Conduct and IPR rules, the open development process of UN CEFACT. And the Code of Conduct, there are links in this slide should you wish to pursue further information. We'll follow the same agenda that we have as a sort of standing agenda now. So were there any new joiners? There will be some introductions. The previous meeting minutes, in fact, the ones of only a few hours ago now, are already up on the website, and the video recording is there if you wish to see it. I'm not going to go back into the schedule and deliverables update. There is probably a little update to make in terms of when we hit a phase we're calling public review, and we'll talk about that a little later. I will go through the mergers, commits, and issues as a sort of update on where we are up to with those things, and then we can have any other business to discuss after that. So now I didn't share my screen, did I?
No, you did not.
I'm sorry. I will briefly share my screen so that and show this again. It's the classic. I love the way Sakishan's laughing at that. Come on, share window, that. Okay, so this is what I was referring to when I was whiffering on the classic UN CEFACT opening slide, the Code of Conduct and IPR, and then this agenda. So that's enough of that. Stop sharing that screen. So what I want to go to is the actual list of issues and artifacts that we have in play. And I'll bring up my window here for that. So you'll see at the moment I'm showing you the issues, open issues, and we only are showing 2 open issues. So I need to, particularly because Hans is online, talk through a process we followed for the issue that Hans raised. The issues are shown in the sort of most recently closed order. The issue that I'm referring to on my screen updates is a definition of the DIA, Digital Identity Anchor, and we've been working through that on a couple of iterations. You'll see the last 2 issues have been revisiting this Digital Identity Anchor definition. So 4 weeks ago, we were reviewing, no, 2 weeks ago, we were reviewing a merged request that had been prompted by Alina, which was to update the glossary for the Digital Identity Anchor definition. At the same time, within that period, Ant sent by email to Alina sort of queries or comments on the Identity Anchor. So what we decided to do, Hans, was to merge what we had already in the pipeline, take your email content and make it an issue, and then sort of work through that issue and discuss it so that we didn't lose anything. So what we realized when we looked at the text was that, and this is the text, I think, of your email, you recognize it, I'm sure, Hans, is that you provided a better ordering of the terms or the words that we were using in your proposed paragraph, and then you had some other discussion, you had an explanation, then you had some other discussion. So what we've done the last few hours is to take on board your proposed change, and if you were to look at the website right now, you'll see that the text that I've highlighted is the text that's now present on the website for the glossary and the DIA definition. And then we kind of worked through the comments. So I've added some text to explain one of the questions that you had around functional equivalence. So we've got a sort of explanation of functional equivalence, and then we realized through Sakishan's help, as we looked at the text of the documents, that in one of the documents we were looking at in the previous meeting, the implementation guidelines, there was a lingering definition for the DIA. It's like an orphaned definition that, because Alina had written that section of the documentation some months ago, really. So what we did was we pulled in another change effectively into this issue to basically make that text refer to the glossary. So the logic was, rather than redefine a term that's defined in the glossary, make the link, if you like, to the definition of the glossary, and don't kind of give yourself a rod for your own back where is that somebody who wanted to come in? Somebody can let them in.
Well, I haven't read through what you put on the website so far.
So you should see, if the merge has worked, and I think the merge has worked, the same text that you propose in this up here in this issue. So this text here is and what we are respecting very much is that it's quite likely we will have further changes. So we just want to just lock in a change, accept there's some comments, and then sort of go forward. So what we were talking about at the previous meeting was that we feel that this is Alina and I, that we are prepared to tell the Bureau, this UN CEFACT Bureau, that we think this is now ready for public review. That means there will still be changes, there'll be comments, there'll be other discussion points, but just tell everybody we think it's mature enough to have a look at. And all of us and other people, members of the public, are able to then raise comments, and we deal with them as we would normally as issues and changes, and decide if we can or can't accept the change. That would be a period of about 60 days. The important thing, I guess, from a Bureau, UN CEFACT Bureau point of view, is that one of the documents, and maybe I'll pull that up, one of the documents that is very interesting for them, I think, to consider is that this is not just a white paper exercise. We haven't just produced what's called a business requirements specification.
John,
we've actually produced a proposal for implementing a system. And
has anyone else got problems understanding John? Or is that problem on my side?
No, I think he's on a link that's buffering a bit, so he cut off.
Oh.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a problem as well.
Okay.
Well, I can hear you all. What I'll do, I'll switch off my camera, because it might be that the upstream link is sort of compressed, but the downstream link is better. So does that sound a bit better if I've switched off my camera? Is that clearer?
At the moment, you're really nicely audible, but that can change.
Okay, so I don't know how much was lost in translation in the last minute or a few minutes. Where I was taking us to was the status that Alina and I think we're at, but we will actually ask the Bureau, the UN CEFACT Bureau, that we think we should go for a public review of the content of effectively the website, but the GitLab repository. And that means that there'll be about 60 days of further discussion and comments and so on around the content that will need to be handled appropriately. But the key thing for the Bureau, we think, is that embedded in this grid set of documents is an idea of building a grid run by the United Nations, an operating system. And that's quite substantively different than having a white paper or a business requirement specification that they publish. So that we need to flag it to them. So Alina and I will send an email to the vice chair and chairs, that's Steve Capel and Nancy Norris, saying that we think it's ready. Take your advice on whether you think it's ready. We think it's ready for public review, and be aware inside it has got this implementation guideline actually building the grid. So does that require special treatment? What do they say? So that's where we're sort of at with what our thoughts are.
Well, bear in mind that you will cause a discussion or spark a discussion about ongoing operational efforts in the UN.
Yeah,
I think that's gonna hit at some point in time. That's gonna hit in. The second comment I'd like to make, maybe to be discussed before public review, is the term functional equivalence that you seem to have chosen to retain in the DR or DIA definition. Functional equivalence refers to functions, and in this case, to functions of ETR of papers or paper instruments that are to be replaced by electronic transferable records. Be prepared to enumerate the functions that you see behind authoritative register entries in order to create functional equivalence or to assert the dia to be functional equivalent. In the case of ETRs, that would be things like possession, to have a single original called singularity, or the ability to control a paper and to determine who the exclusive controller is, and a couple more. Yeah, if you choose to use functional equivalence, then be prepared to enumerate functions. That's just what I would like to send in order for you not to be surprised about questions coming back, maybe from legal folks. But I'll tell that Alina as well.
Alina will get the message because these are recorded and the minutes are recorded and sent. So Alina will get that message, but she is a lawyer and she's also familiar with ML ETR as you are. So that was her words, right? Those are her words, and chosen deliberately. So yes, it's a good point. The intent is that a digital form of a physical record has the same legal weight and meaning. And that's effectively what Alina says in the last few words of the last sentence, that it doesn't change the existing documentation that's presented as, say, physical documentation. It doesn't change the legal significance. To your point about the functions, of course, what we choose to include in a DIA changes the type of functions that the DIA has. So if you have a potential to include, as a registrar might choose to, content that other registrars don't, we can't enumerate it. We don't have control over that. Grid, as a principle, will not tell registrars how to do their business. So what we tell a registrar is that if you do issue a DIA, the DIA must have a functional equivalence to what you normally issue as either a physical document or you list on your website. Anyway, you're right. That's one of the points that people will potentially gravitate to, because it's a significant consideration. As is the point about the you were mentioning, I think, Hans, UN operational sort of capacity, and the guidelines that we're proposing, the implementation guidelines, very clearly describe a very low weight operational load that is self-sustaining. Yeah. Well, let me.
Usually people decide themselves how they operate their systems and have large lists of things that they believe needs to be catered for, and then the cost adds up and adds up and adds up.
Let me show you the extreme end of minimalization and self-sustaining. The operating ICAO PKD system, the one that does our passports as we travel internationally, had 1.5 people operating it last year. That's it, 1.5 people. And that's the extreme skinny end. They had half a person because one person wasn't very well. But that's they have as an operating staff for EK.
Yeah, sounds like we should pray that they never get sick or we can't travel any longer.
It's yes, it was fascinating. So the fact that I could speak to the one person, or one of the 1.5s, meant that he was not quite fully capacity, but yes, but that's extremely skinny. So the idea that we're proposing, because we're very well aware the UN has, in a sense, no capacity, that this has to be self-sustaining. So it has to be a kind of imprimatur, a signature of the UN, but it's run by an agency that's self-sustaining. It gets its funding from the participants. It minimal load. The design of the grid is itself as simple as possible, but no simpler. It doesn't sort of aim to have huge amounts of data or anything else. So we'll see that, but that's where we're taking into this implementation guideline. So that's sort of the main things we were talking about a few hours ago with Alina online, that we've adopted, but we know that we may still have changes to things like the glossary. We want to suggest to the Bureau that we're ready to go to a public review, but we'll hear what they say. And we want to draw their attention to this idea that we're proposing an operating system is developed called this thing called Grid. We want to get the feedback on how to go about the public review process. Those are the key points I want to discuss. Is there anything that, before I move on to any other business, there are some things that are interesting to share that outside of the project, but is there any other business that people want to, any other points people want to bring to on the project? No, I think I'll take silence as a no. So from a broader scale point of view, a couple of things are happening from a UNTP project point of view. The United Nations Transparency Protocol is about to go into its public review of 0.7. That should happen in the next few days. I think there'll be announcements from the UN CEFACT Bureau. They've accepted that it should go into public review. And that means that they'll be basically kind of saying we're at 0.7, but we're waiting for any comments for the next few days. They're retooling, as they call it, the sandbox environments and other things that allow participants to explore UNTP implementations. And that should take about 2 weeks from, I guess, the beginning of next week, from Monday. That's quite interesting. Less interesting maybe, but personally interesting. It turns out there's a conference here in London next week on supply chain and organizational identity, and someone from Glyph is presenting, Steve Capella is presenting, Nancy Norris is presenting, and Lucy Yang, who some of you may know from work she's done with UNDP and other parts of the UN, and also at the Linux Foundation, is actually flying out from Canada to be there. The other people are actually, I think, talking heads is the phrase I was given. They're going to be on a video call, but I can attend because I happen to be in London next week. That was all I have today. I feel like I should have more because there's more people on the line. But anything else that people want to raise or suggest?
Quick question. This public review that we have, is it a formal 60 days kind of public review? Is it sort of just like the UNTP, or is it different?
It's exactly the same. So the open development process from UN CEFACT has this sort of stage gate kind of process of things, and so they have built into that the idea that once you've done enough work that you feel it's a reasonably stable baseline, you go into a public review process, and then subjects you're not having in those 60 days a sort of insurmountable change or rejection or something else that means you can't kind of complete, then you address those requests and you have a finalized version after 60 days. So I guess, Anne, that's why I'm asking Steve Capel and Nancy Norris what's the best way to do it. That's what I've understood, but that's what I'll ask of them.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
There's a link in our documentation to the ODP, the Open Development Process. I think in the project schedule about the project and the project plan, you'll find some information about the process.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I guess the other thing I'm interested in all the other projects people are running. So I'm kind of interested in what's happening in Europe. I'm interested in what's happening with the IRA Foundation, but we don't need to share that on this call. I can sort of stop the recording on the project, and then maybe we can have a discussion about other things if they're of interest to discuss. Shall I do that? I'll do that.
Is there a link for public review, John, right now? So, I mean, is it under review? Sorry.
Yeah, well, Mark, you've been reviewing things, and so is everybody else in this call, right? So yeah. It's really just a flag to say that, you know, the people who've been active participants have always been reviewing and changing and commenting and so on. So there's no change to that, right? But what we're I guess flagging is that there's a public announcement saying, okay, this project that's been working in this little bubble is saying, come and have a read of what we've done and tell us what you think. We may or may not get more people reviewing it. Obviously, we hope we do, but it's a sort of formal flag to say that's what we're doing.
Thank you, sir.
So unless someone puts a hand up, I'm going to press stop recording. 3, 2, 1.